Wondering why I'm tapping the box? It's a special review for me because this is from a company that I have personally supported and I intend to have a few units of them for my own personal usage because let's be honest, this company does a lot of good things. And this, my viewers, is the Softears Edge. Softears' latest new IEM, which looks funny because I have it with me and in my hands, and look at these angular boys. It might remind you of something from the same company, and yes, they are as boxy and sharper than the Twilight when it comes to the finishing. Anyway, this review is going to be how far has Softears come when it comes to designing unique looking IEMs, and mainly two of their boxiest IEMs because I haven't seen this design anywhere and replicated by any audio companies out there. So we are going to sit back, hydrate, and see myself review the Softears Edge and how it fares against the Twilight. So stay tuned. Now that we have gotten everything out of the way, I have in my hands the Twilight as well as the Edge to compare and give you the most detailed breakdown as possible from my hands. And before I start the segment of sound, I would like to thank one person because of which this review is entirely possible. And no, it's not from the brand. No, neither Softears nor any of the retailers sent out these units. The credit goes to Bhaumik Modi for loaning me the Softears Twilight as well as the Edge full set. So thank you, Bhaumik ji, for giving me this unit. And now let's dive deep into what the sound is of the Edge. As usual, a Monk Blues audio sound segment is divided into three parts: the lows, the mids, and the highs. And let's start with the lows of the Edge. The Softears Edge, through the first track, Tipper's Mariscoes, has a wonderful start. The opening intro has a perceived rippling effect which oozes a lot of polish, and when the rest of the elements come in, the bass keeps on going with a wonderful level of separation from the rest of the elements, and beats are super strong with a lot of punch. The attack is fast and a decay that is not sluggish by any means. It's timed very well, the cutoff is not premature, and this allows the Edge to be as aggressive as possible while holding as much restraint as possible so that the Edge does not come off bloated or gloomy or bleeding into the lower mids. One thing is for sure, the Softears Edge is a very ear-tip dependent IEM, and this directly impacts the quantity of bass that it has, because I could see that in the 5128 FR graphs, the Softears Edge was closing as close to the Nightjar Singularity, which is one of the best IEMs, I would say, when it comes to overall bass, especially in terms of quantity. So if this Edge is giving you a strong bass with a quantity as close to as the Nightjar Singularity, that means it's very potent. However, if you feel that it's too much, without EQing, you can just swap on to the ear tips, which is a good thing. And continuing now again with the song, the drop in Tipper's Mariscoes through the Edge has a super clean, precise execution where not once did the bass feel overpowering. Now moving on to the second track, Rush's Limelight. If there is one way I could describe how the Edge performs on this track, coherent is what I would choose. Right from the beginning, both the drums and the bass know what to do, and that makes me feel very nice about the Edge. Of course, the width of the perceived stage is a bit lacking, but it has enough depth to beautifully capture the prodigally controlled aggression on Peart's drums, while across moments, Geddy's bass lines get so intense. I feared that it would spill over the drums, but the Edge has ridiculous composure to reel it in like Rafael Nadal on a clay court. Finally, the Edge is a ferocious shade of warm, which could be bassy for some when it comes to tonality, but not for me, at least on the ear tips that I'm using. Tevina's Velvet Standard and Tangent's T300 APB white bores. Guitars could be bordering on being slightly uncomfortably warm, again in terms of tonality, but that also gives vocals a pleasant compliment, especially on a track like this. Then the final track to describe about the lows, Daft Punk's Get Lucky, where the Edge does a brilliant job on this track, Be it the amount of control it needs to hold over the slam on the bass, the degree to which notes from the bass need to be enunciated in a way that doesn't diminish the track, the depth in the perceived stage is adequate. And the warmth in tonality observed now is restrained to not cloud over the rest of the sound, which can get annoying if the IEM doesn't know how much warmth does it need to add in order for the track to sound melodious, joyful, engaging, whatever might be the adjective of your choice. Finally, vocals are planted in the center, and the note weight perceived on Pharrell's vocals was plenty for the Edge to keep everything kind of cohesive, just like I said in the previous track. And I must say one again, I thoroughly enjoyed this track on the Edge. So once now we are done with the lows, let's move on to how the mid-range is on the Edge. So now for the Edge, the mid-range is equally as capable as we could see in the lows, or I could see in the lows. But for the mid-range, only 2 tracks were enough for me to decide how good the Edge is. So first off, Tool's Lateralus. Edge comes off here a tad excessive when it comes to the intensifying drum intro as the guitar starts. So like the part which carry lets you know that yeah, you are in for a ride with Tool. So during that segment, the bass that the Edge has feels a bit excessive, but once the elements join in, the Edge gets back in its track for keeping things auditorily fun. Edge surprisingly manages to not humble Maynard's vocals in terms of weight, and guitars have a shade of warmth that I appreciate this time with tons of energy. The instrument separation is fantastic, and especially for an IEM which is this warm, imaging is precise while timbre remained fairly accurate. More than resonant also, I would say. I was amazed when I heard the clarity sap through with the final rudiment of carry, and right before I can appreciate the texture of the whine bass. And not once did I feel that the Edge was leaving something aside, even though Lateralus is a busy as heck track. Like there are a lot of elements that are going through. It's mastered well, so the Edge doesn't have any problem in terms of resolution and all. And keeping the mastering aside, the amount of elements that this track has just from 4 men outputting through is tremendous. And if Lateralus is sounding this great, then any technically proficient track through the Edge will sound in a similar manner. Now, for the second track, first given by Queens of the Stone Age, this is a busy track with a lot of fast-paced elements. And the Softears Edge once again impresses me. Crisp, well-separated, timbrally accurate snare hits, energetic weighted guitars, planted vocals with adequate weight, and the cymbals being audible right alongside the vocals. Neither push back too much, nor coming too forward, not shouty, not fatiguing, not piercing. How can an IEM tune this one is giving me so much sonic enjoyment, and that credit goes to Softears. But again, I would say it's a bit too early for a victory lap. Let's move on to see how the Edge fares through the highs, because believe me, now the Edge hits a hard. Now that we have reached the final junction in terms of sound, 2 tracks once again. Let's start off with Dave Brubeck's Take 5. The Edge first gets the shimmery, almost peppy textures on the cymbals. Again, adjective of your choice. If you have heard this track, I would choose shimmery and peppy. And then the snare where the timbre is just remarkable now. Then once the horns come in, the Edge pulls my attention to how easily it was able to capture the faint drawing of the breath of the horns as well as the pressing on the keys of the horns, while not making me forget that the horns right now are leading the show. Notes of the piano are nimble and tonally warm, not warm enough that they sound different from the actual key. But the best part comes in the drum solo, where the Edge got the potency of the kicks, the crisp snares, and the toms resonant enough to almost sound like how it should sound live. And Take 5 is an excellent track to just keep on listening if you're working, or if you are just enjoying life, or if you're just relaxing. And The drum solo always catches you off guard because of the way the channels separate and split, and then you are hearing everything segmented across the channels. And despite the track splitting that way and forcing the IM into a corner to give out its best, I would say the Softears Edge exceeded my expectations here. But like I said, when I was introducing you to this segment, the Softears Edge hits a hurdle. And this exact hurdle comes across in Patricia Barber's Icarus. Icarus is a track from the album Mythologist, which in my opinion is a fantastic work from Patricia Barber, but not so much so when it comes to the actual enjoyment or the technical proficiency, because compared to her other albums like Cafe Bloom, Mythologist lagged behind considerably when it came to mastering. And this is a track that is sibilant from the get-go. Like, sibilance is actually present in the recording. And the Edge definitely, confidently I would say, exaggerates the sibilance, which surprisingly manages to keep the cymbals from being fatiguing. But again, what's done is done. And even though you get to enjoy Patricia's lush, velvety vocal textures and the way she can effortlessly glide through the dynamics of the vocal parts on this track, the sibilance is something that is present through and through, and the way she enunciates her C's and S's, you really will feel it through the Edge, which makes me say that the IEM is quite unforgiving. Through the straight note sustain, the Edge exhibited no sign of tears, which is a saving grace, while the piano, bass and guitars supplemented the lush texture of Patricia's voice. It was just the sibilance that had to diminish what was otherwise an excellent listen, and almost scored a full home run for me. So that is the sound segment of the Edge. Let's move on to how it fares with its other boxy sibling, the Twilight, which again, by the way, fantastic IM from Softears. Okay, now I have the Twilight in my hands, and I'm just going to show you briefly on how boxy the Twilight is. So this is the Twilight, and it has a very nice ribbed texture, I would say. Ribbed can be found somewhere else, let's not go into it. And I would say the first thing that I observed between the Edge and the Twilight was how comfortable the Edge was when it came to fit and seal, because you had to wiggle the Twilight so frequently to get the perfect seal. It almost defeated its existence, because the sound of the Twilight was something else for me when I heard it for the first time. Anyway, let's get down to the comparisons when it comes to sound. The Edge leans into a shade of warm with heavy energetic guitars and thick vocal weight. It's aggressive, fun, designed to bring out maximum energy. But the Twilight now operates as a mid-range masterclass, focusing entirely on realism and keeping the timbre the highlight of its performance. It abandons the heavy bordering on subjectively uncomfortable warmth of the Edge in favor of an organic, fatigue-free neutrality. Neutrality is actually a wrong word. I would say a fatigue-free shade of warm that simply sounds correct and somehow fitting right out of the box. When it came to the bass presentation, the Edge relies, I would say, on rigid military-esque discipline, delivering super fast attack, punchy beats, well-timed decay, and it just sounds so cohesive in the aggressive bass lines from bleeding into the drums, for example. But if I were to say, keeping the existence of the Twilight in hand, I think the Edge will fatigue you out if you are coming from the Twilight, because the Twilight is just more relaxed. It still possesses some semblance of good performance, exciting performance on the lows, but it trades the visceral high energy slam of that the Edge has for a more natural flowing coherence. And now when it comes to the treble forgiveness, I think we can agree that if you have heard both sets, I think the Twilight still performs mildly better And that mildly better part comes from the department of sibilance. And this is the sharpest divide. The Edge is extremely detailed and just leaves the Twilight into the dust. And I'm a sucker for detail. I just want my IEMs to sound as detailed as possible. And even though I enjoyed the Twilight, in front of the Edge, this just looks elementary, like a nursery school going kid when it comes to detail. It's beautifully capturing the micro textures like key presses or the breath and its jaws. But again, on the track that I used to see the restraint of sibilance on IEMs and headphones, it will brutally exaggerate inherent sibilance in the track, which is already present. It's just going to amplify. The Twilight is the undisputed champion here when it comes to the smooth, relaxed listening. It deliberately avoids harshness, ensuring that even the most sibilant of tracks remain completely fatigue-free and enjoyable without ever piercing the ear. But here comes in another point from me. If I were to sit down and tip roll and EQ, I think I can tune this exaggerated sibilance out on the Edge. Let whatever is present on the track to be right there. I'll just EQ out, tip roll, and get the IM going. The same I can do for the Twilight, because what's lost is lost, and the Twilight loses out on detail as well. So overall for me, I think I'm going with the Edge through and through. Another thing I would like to comment here is that the stock cable of the Edge is horrible. Why do I say it's horrible? Because it's just too light and the corners of the Edge are sharp enough to cause you some physical discomfort. And when I have to wiggle the IEM for the fit and seal after spending quite some time, I want the cable to be heavy to contain the weight, and the stock cable miraculously fails at doing that job right. So if Softears does come in my video and sees this video and sees me whine about the cable, I think you could do a lot better than the cable of the Softears Edge. So when I keep the Twilight out of the picture and I see what the Edge is trying to do, let me bring in another IEM into the comparison list, and that is the Symphonium Meteor, which is another dear favorite IEM of mine. And this would be a tough battle for me because the Meteor is comfortable, it has an enjoyable sound, it's built well, and only thing I would say that the Meteor lacks is once again detail and slight recession, recession through the mid-range, because the Edge comparatively sounds significantly more open, spacious, and not claustrophobic by any means. Again, Meteor is not sibilant, but also I could feel that it could perform better when it came to the highs. Edge, only one issue, sibilance on sibilant recordings, exaggerated, and besides that, I think I have nothing to complain about. So I think I have spoken enough regarding the Edge versus some of the offerings, and two questions remain. Will I buy the Softears Edge at retail? Absolutely. Will I buy the Softears Edge used? Absolutely. So this earns an honest recommendation from me if you are in search of fun, fantastic, non-analytical, non-sterile sound. I think for the price that Softears is charging you for the Edge, I would say it's a mild bargain. It's that good, period. So that's about it for the Edge. If you have liked this review, please let me know in the comments. If you have any other requests, please let me know. I'll try my level best to accommodate you all. Monk Bruce Audio by Ramanus Kashyap, a one-man audio project signing out.